Hi, I'm Annie Meehan with H3 TV, where I meet you every Wednesday and I invite a guest to talk about hope, health, and happiness. I'm super excited today to bring Pam on, but before I do, I just want to tell you a little bit about why I started this, especially if it's your first time listening. When COVID hit, I knew that a lot of people were feeling hopeless, unhealthy, and unhappy, personally, professionally, in their relationships, and in their life. And I thought, what if I could come into your living room, come into your office, and encourage you, bring you some ideas on hope, health, and happiness. And then I thought, wouldn't it even be more fun to do a talk show, TV style, rather than a podcast for those of us that are visual learners and to invite other people to share what do they think about hope, health, and happiness and how do they get there? So please help me welcome Pam to the stage. Hey, Pam, thanks for being with me today.
Hi, Annie. How are you?
I am doing fabulous.
Well, good. I'm so glad to be here. And as I listen to your introduction, what a great service to people that want to tune in to this kind of episode and be able to just interact with people live and work through things. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about you, Pam. Who are you? Where do you live? What do you do?
Well, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, where right now a storm is starting to move through. So I hope I make it. All of a sudden, it's gotten dark in here. I have my lights on, but please excuse the dark in the background. It'll get light as soon as the clouds move out. But anyway, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a jack of a lot of trades. I am a lifelong learner and I love to do a lot of things. And what I've been doing for the past few years is doing professional speaking, training, and coaching, mainly in the communications area. I am a computer science and math major from college. Shh, don't tell anybody. And now I'm working with people on communications and connecting with others. And I haven't really met other people like me that are technical in background. I count my steps walking across the room and all of that. But I've figured out how to connect with other people, and I love to help others like me, analytical thinkers. I love to see the light come on for them as they discover that for themselves. So that's it in a nutshell.
Great. Thanks, Pam. I love that you mentioned first a storm because when you live in the South, as to me, Florida is, though people in Florida say it's not the South,
It
there's a
is.
storm every day. And it might show up that it's rainy, but our storms last 10 minutes to an hour. It'll be bright and sunny, then the storm will come through, and then the sun will come back out. And that's exactly what being hopeful is to me is sometimes we go through stormy seasons. Sometimes there's dark, but the light will come back out. And so there's a place for everyone. I love that you're analytical and we all bring our different gifts to the work we do. I love that you're a lifelong learner. I think that I'm a lifelong learner and hopefully a lifelong teacher. And so I think that's important. But when I like to meet with people, I like you to share what are some of your keys to staying hopeful, healthy, and happy? How do you start your day? What do you make sure is part of your profession or your personal life to stay in that H3 mindset?
Well, I think one of the key things for me that I've realized as I've been an adult is that I get to choose the people I spend time around. And I just want to say that you're one of those people that attracts people. You have a bright, sunny personality, and you're just, every time I've ever met you, seen you, spoken with you as our flight was delayed just this past summer, had the opportunity to sit with you. You are just a bright light, even with those around you. And I like to be that for other people too. And it fuels my energy if I take the focus off of myself and put it on the other person. You never know what people are going through, and to think the best of people first. I didn't always used to think the best of people first, but it makes me have so much more of a positive, better attitude if I'm thinking the best of the other person instead of, in my head going, oh, I'm not sure, and just thinking negative thoughts. It's not helpful. So that helps my attitude a lot, is to really be thinking of the best of the others that I'm around. My daily routine, I'm very physically oriented. I love to work out. One of my businesses that I grew and I'm no longer doing as of fall of 2020, I gave all of my clients to somebody else, but I was a personal fitness trainer.
Mm.
And I was the oldest one in my class. Again, a lifelong learner, and that physical application and challenging yourself. I think it's always good to be trying to move beyond where you are and not be just content in the physical area or in other areas too. I apply that to pretty much all areas of my life. And I just try to move through the routine of my day. I can't say routine of my day. My days are not routine. I'm lying. They're not routine. And that's one thing I like about being an entrepreneur is that all my days are different and I get to choose.
Nice.
It's really
I
fuel.
think you reminded, you did two thoughts about people. You said, be careful who you surround yourself with. So you're intentional. I want to be around positive people. I want to be around good energy and positivity. And you also reminded yourself, be careful what I think about other people. I want to be kind and thoughtful. I want to think with intention the best rather than, yet you knew that you've shifted that over the years, let alone being a lifelong learner and moving your body. So important. I'm a huge connector. I new to Minnesota or new to Florida, but still connecting people. I got my hair done at a new place today, still trying to find that right salon place. And I was giving her lists of names of people to connect with in Florida and people online. And she's like, you have such great energy and you're such a generous spirit. And I'm like, exactly what you said, Pam, is I think that when I do that, it not only blesses other people, but it's a way for me to take care of myself is like, who can I give to today? It like lights me up. Who can I help? So if you're listening right now and you're like, hey, I got a question for Pam or for Annie, feel free to write questions and comments in the comment box and we will make sure to address those. All right. So moving along, Pam, I want to know, does hope and happiness, do you think hope and happiness comes from choice or from chance or based on circumstance?
Well, let me think about that. I think that sometimes happiness can be circumstantial and based on, whether I'm happy or not has to do a lot of times with what's happening at that moment and how I've been impacted by it. But hope, I usually always have hope. And being forward thinking, and my faith gives me hope for the long-term future, but even the short-term future, I'm always looking at things more in a positive light. That's a little bit of an insight into me. One thing I have learned lately, I'm actually pursuing a certification, and again, lifelong learner, is something called positive intelligence. It's kind of about, have you heard of it?
I have
Yeah,
heard it.
how we're talking to ourselves. I'm certified in emotional intelligence. A lot of us are. But this to me comes kind of before that, in that self-awareness piece where you're aware of your own internal talking and how we're talking to ourselves. And I think that colors whether we have hope or not, or if we're happy in the moment or not. We get to choose that, really. I think the outside things can be going on, but we can still have hope and we can still be happy, even if it's terrible from the outside.
That's true. Very true. I'm reading a book right now called Switch Your Brain On, and it's a book and a workbook by Dr. Carol something. I can't think of her, but it's all about our thoughts. And I love what she's writing because it's like what I teach and what I speak. And she's like, people think it's like new psychology, but it's been since the beginning of time that very powerful what we think about it, how we choose to show up, even in the midst of the challenge, let alone in the midst of the good times and how we create other people. So lots of ways to train our brain for intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, positivity intelligence, and being aware of our thinking. Think about your thinking. I always say, people are like, what's your story about stories? I'm like, rewrite the ones that don't serve you. We don't have to live where we came from or what we are in. We can always rewrite it and make a new story.
Yeah.
So I like this. You already touched on this question, but I one of my favorites. What's the difference between being hopeful and optimistic and happiness and joy? So hopeful and optimistic, happiness and joy.
Okay, can I do one at a time?
You can, yes, absolutely. Hopeful and optimistic. What's the difference?
Hopeful. Well, let me think about that, because optimism is, mindset is really important in these words that I'm hearing from you. And I think that, how we're even deciding to think about these words and to think about how we move through life is really important. If you ask anybody, we were out walking, my husband and I were out walking the other morning, and we passed another lady we were walking downhill and she was walking uphill and struggling, but she was almost at the top. And I said, "You are almost there. You are going to make it." And she said, "Thank you so much." It was just a natural reflex. And my husband just looked at me and said, "You are so encouraging." And I just felt like very optimistic for her. Do you know what I mean? It was like I was headed downhill. So my job was not hard at all at that point. I had already, but so I think optimism is something that you bring to, when I'm faced with a problem, I'm facing it with, we're going to find a solution and it's going to be workable. May not be the ultimate greatest situation, but we'll be able to get through this. So I do approach things like that with that.
Optimistic attitude. I would call you strategically optimistic is how I
Okay.
personally describe that. As like optimism is partially personality, but it's also like you're strategically optimistic. Like I'm going to figure out a way to get through it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm saying it's going to work out. And I think that's sometimes what our clients need to hear is, this is going to be rough. It might be painful. It might be uncomfortable, but we're going to get through it. And I'm going to be there as we get through it. So that's
because we have all struggled, and the other word was against optimistic was hopeful.
Optimistic and hopeful. Yeah.
Hopeful. And I guess, I know that you have talked before about your challenges in your early life, and I never talk about that, but I will right here because we're on live TV and I don't know who's listening to us, but I just feel like somebody might need to hear this that's going to watch this. Because if you met me today, you would never guess. I mean, I had a very, very traumatic early childhood. My mom was married young. She had me when she was 20. And she then had 2 other children real quickly after that. She was married to a man that was much older and a raging alcoholic. And it was a crazy, I have some great memories. My best memory was, leaving on my bike literally all day on the trails around where we lived. It was a great release. And I would come home when the dinner bell rang. And I think because of some of those early traumatic times and the things that I went through, a lot of that I don't even remember, some of which I do, unfortunately. But I have always had a hopeful, maybe that's where we're going to work through it. But I've always had hope for the future. Even if it was a terrible situation, I've always been hopeful that it was going to be better. And it is better. And, so my life ended up to be great. She left him when I was 7, remarried when I was 9, and I had a great stepdad. But then we started moving a zillion times. So again, every time we moved, it was a whole change. I was a young person, and you develop some coping skills, I guess I want to say, depending on what your circumstances are.
That's right. I think that those challenges, those obstacles, they make us resilient. I tell people I love to get lost. They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, when you move a lot as a kid, you're always lost. So you're always starting over and you're discovering and you meet new friends, and it teaches me that I don't want anyone to feel alone. So I connect people and I navigate and I try new things. And I love that, Pam. I think all of that gives you the character and strength of who you are today to do the work we do, right? And the other one was happiness and joy. Is there a difference? And if so, what do you think the difference is?
I think joy is much more than happiness. I think joy is one of those, it exudes from you, and joy is just really big. I think like happiness in that context, it's more situational. And like I said before, but joy is just that coming from you from the inside and not dependent on what's happening in your environment around you. And you can be a joyful person in the worst of what someone would look at and say, those are the worst of circumstances, but you could still be joyful. So I think that it's that oozing from the inside out. They say what's inside of you comes out. And I really believe that.
I think about that a lot because people are like, "Are you really this happy? Is this real? Are you being pretend?" And I'm like, "No, I'm real." But I've been really sad. So I know that sadness. I always think I am a joyful person. That doesn't mean I'm always happy. To me, happiness is circumstantial or based on situations, circumstances. And there's hard things that I go through in life, as we all do. But joy is who I am. And like that is what I love spreading with the world. Like, what if you could still believe in the good in the midst of the hard, in the midst of the challenge. And I agree. Not everybody agrees with that. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I always think joy is who people are. And a lot of times that does come from our faith. We know how the story ends, where happiness is fleeting. Like, I'm happy because this is a fun day, or we're doing something cool, or we're hanging out on TV. That's always fun. So, okay.
We are hanging out on TV.
So here's the challenging question for you. So Pam, I know that things seep into our lives, right? So I want to know another two-part question. One, what seeps in that steals your hope, happiness, and health? And then when it does, what do you do?
Yeah, and those are good questions. I think all of us have that challenge. Mine changes from time to time, but I think it came from the coping mechanism that I adopted when I was younger, which was performance. You just had to achieve, and that was the way you succeeded or got attention or whatever it was. And whoever it is that's out there listening that needs to hear that, I think that's the end of the story about, but you get these coping mechanisms, and that was one of mine. And so still today as an adult, I struggle with that, make the list and check it off, and more of the doing. And that when you study positive intelligence, it's one of my saboteurs. It sabotages me, and I'm sabotaging myself. And in just trying to get through this list, and I'm not really. Some of the things on the list might not even need to be done. As we really sit back and evaluate some of the things that we are overwhelming ourselves with, I have to do, and you have this whole long list. If you really think about it, some of those things on that list don't even need to be done. They aren't important. It's not going to matter. And you're adding them and adding so much stress to your life that you don't need to do it. And to be able to step back from realize I'm in that place of overwhelming myself with a to-do list and having to get through it, stepping back and really evaluating what the important things are that need to happen. That helps me so much.
I love that. So evaluating, it's funny you're saying this, because I'm like, oh, that's part of my happiness this week. Is like, I said no to 3 things, and my husband overheard me, and he was like, wow, look at you. But part of adding one more thing to my genre of all the different things I can offer working with Vistage, I have to say no to some things. So I am doing exactly what you're talking about. And I love that you're saying this. I'll make a list of 20 things and then go, okay, do you really need to do all 20, or could you get rid of 10? And so sometimes you get overwhelmed, or it can bring you down to have that big list that a lot of people live with, a lot of achievers live with. I don't even feel like I am, though. People always like, is that how you feel loved? Is like you get a lot done? I'm like, no, I love to be busy, and I love to feel like, for me, I think it's about making a difference in the world. Like, what can I do today to impact one life, one organization, one audience, one group of business owners, whatever it is. And I think knowing when you can say no is a freedom, and you can still be really successful. And also taking a moment to celebrate, Pam, all you have accomplished, all you have done, and letting yourself celebrate that. And so we know there's listeners out there that are perfectionists, or that are achievement driven, or that are beating themselves up when they don't do 50 things in a day. And I always say, I make a list of 20, and if I get 3 done, I remember it's a win. I remember if I get 1 done. And I love to get up early and work out first thing in the morning, because then I'm like, even if I do nothing else today, especially during COVID, not even taking a shower, I'm sorry to admit that to some people, but just like, hey, at least I worked out. And not that I always worked out either, but I've met this Fabulous 50 woman online, whatever, that does these workouts. Do you know her? The Fabulous 50?
I do not know her.
I can't stop talking about it, because I feel like she's a motivational speaker who's healthy, who constantly is saying, you're amazing. Why are we so hard on ourselves? Why do we worry about, like, we're never going to be younger than now. I'm not going to look like I was 20. I mean, my body's changed, and I'm super grateful my body's smart and healthy and strong. And so just celebrating that. And I know you love to be healthy and strong. And I love that you encourage this woman walking. Like, you could have been the one voice. She could have been like, why did I do this? I'm so mad. And instead you said, you got this. Like, you just encourage us. So I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, people get put in my path as I'm going about doing things. And you may or may not know, like, I am a lifelong learner. And just in 2016, and I'm not a young woman, I started climbing mountains.
Oh, awesome.
So I've done 1 a year, and we just climbed a mountain in New Mexico, the highest mountain in New Mexico, when I was down there just this last month. And what I find is nearly every time, and I'm always doing it with my husband, we come across someone who needs, I don't know if they need us or if we need to be able to pour out to them, but we had another lady this time in New Mexico. She had tried to summit this mountain this was her fourth attempt.
Wow.
And the storms move in is what happens because it's in a valley, and she wasn't sure. And there was a storm moving in, but we had technology, so we could tell where the storm was going. We were closely watching it. And she kind of came, she was hiking, climbing by herself. And she waited for us at this one point and said, I didn't want to go by myself because the storm is coming. I said, we will go with you. In addition, we were able to see that the storm looks like it's moving the other way, even though it's kind of right there. You feel like it's on top of you, but it's moving the other way. She said, oh, that's great. And she continued on. She was going faster than us. She continued on. She summited and she came back down. We saw her on the way down. She was so thankful. Just that little, it was just little to us. But that's when she told us, this is the fourth time that I have tried to climb this mountain and I've had to go back down the other 3 times. And you helped me get to the summit. It made our day. I mean, we wouldn't have cared. We did care, but we wouldn't have cared if we summited. We helped her summit on her 4th try. So it was so fulfilling. And it was just a small effort on our part.
Beautiful. And it's that you're a natural encourager, that you see people, that you notice people, and then you encourage them on their journey.
Yeah.
So Pam, what are you hopeful about personally in your life? What are you looking forward to in your personal life? Whatever that is right now, what are you hopeful about, looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to? Well, I told you I've just taken over as the president of this association that I belong to, and it's a big job, a little bit intimidating coming out of COVID. It's a speaking association, and there's a lot to consider, and we want to meet the needs of the membership. Like there's some pressure there for me, but at the same time, I'm so excited to be doing that. So I'm very hopeful for that year, kind of my year as president, which starts, we have an event this Saturday coming up. And I'm just really hopeful about that. I'm hopeful that our association can move forward after the pandemic was kind of, decimated people that depend on speaking for a living and training. A lot of people did great. It just depended, but it's just, so I'm hopeful for that. On a personal level, my husband and I are involved in a Bible study. We lead a small couples group that's part of a larger Bible study with over 100 people, but we every year have a group of couples, which is really a fun ministry for us. And we really enjoy pouring into other couples. We've been married 37 years, and that doesn't come without challenges and overcoming obstacles. And, I think it's harder to stay married than it is to get divorced in some situations. I truly believe that, because you really have to deal with your own things, your own relationship. When you get to a certain level, you really have to work through the hard things. You can't just ignore it.
Yeah. My daughter and I were talking about earlier today about careers and like wanting to quit when a job is hard, and she's loving her job, but she hasn't always, and commitment, like learning commitment young. And sometimes you shouldn't stay married, for sure. I understand that. No judgment, but I also, that commitment to sticking with anything, whether it's our career or relationships only get challenging, whether it's our friendships or, and I just think that ongoing commitment. I love that. I love, Pam, that you're looking forward to. So you're going to be the president of the National Speakers Association for Georgia. And so I invite people who are listening from the Georgia area, check out NSA. If you dream of being a speaker, if you have vision, if you're curious, go to meetings, learn about it. You go to Toastmasters to learn to speak. You go to NSA, National Speakers Association, to learn the business of speaking. And when I was president in Minnesota, I probably spent 25 hours a week for the full year. And it was a lot. And people are like, you don't have to do all that. But for me, I always want everything I'm associated with, everything I'm involved in, to be excellent. I know it's one long year. I know you're on the board for 3 to 4 years, but I'm so grateful I did. I really dug in deep with great relationships with other members, new members, potential members, academy members. And I gave it my all, so that when I walked away, I went, hey, I did what I set out to do, and people were touched, and that's why I did it. So you're going to be excellent at it. I love that you're hopeful. I think sometimes in the midst of off seasons or down seasons or stressful seasons, we forget to look forward. Like, you know what? You are touching lives in a couples Bible study. You are touching lives as the president of the National Speaker Association. They are both privileged positions
Mhm.
that can make a positive impact in our world. And so I
Right.
love those great things. And I love that you're doing both. Okay. When I think of health, Pam, I think of it in 7 areas. So though I own gyms for 12 years, what I really realized is that we are one whole body, right? With lots of components. But I want to list my 7, and then I want you to tell me, what are you personally working on, and where do you like to work with people? What area of their health? So we have physical, of course, emotional, mental, financial, spiritual, career, and relationship. So which one are you personally working on, and which one do you like to help people with?
Oh my goodness, Annie. I didn't know you owned gyms for 12 years.
Yeah, I had 2 gyms. I had one in a small town and one right outside of St. Paul. So
I
yeah,
love that. Okay, that's a separate conversation. I
yeah.
won't take up this time with that. But
I realized the whole being. So people would come to me and say,
yeah,
I'm overweight, or I don't like my
yeah,
body, or don't have energy. And then you'd hear, oh, they're broke. Their finances are out of order, or they don't have a faith. So they're full of
right,
anxiety, or
right.
their relationships are horrible and toxic. And so what I realized is we have to treat the whole body,
We do.
usually one piece at a time,
We
um,
do.
but being aware and digging into that struggle, listening to their stories.
Well, and I am learning just really in recent years, and so I took an NLP, neuro linguistic programming certification and coaching, and then I'm certified in behavior styles and emotional intelligence and all that, and now the positive intelligence really with our self-talk. And I am such a believer. I used to say when I was younger, and I didn't really know what I was saying, and now science is backing it up. I just wish I could get out of my own way. So I think the thing that I'm working on, I'm not sure which word it fits under, probably mental in a
Yeah,
positive way, is my mindset.
yeah,
Because I think my mindset, and all of us, this is just my opinion and where I am right now, my mindset really colors how I show up in all the other areas of my life. How am I thinking about myself? How am I feeling about what's happening in my life? And what are my decisions in that? Am I deciding to take one step forward? My mantra is just keep putting one foot in front of the other, especially when I'm above the tree line climbing a mountain and there's not as much oxygen. I'm like, just keep putting one foot in front of the other and head in the right direction. You will get there. Sometimes you have to call on that mantra in your life as well. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other when everything seems to be falling in around you. And so I think my mindset is where I'm working right now. And I have worked with my clients, a lot in the relationship area, kind of the communications and connecting. Yeah, as corporate leaders and then their teams, are working together. It's often in those relationship dynamics that things fall away. Everybody's really smart. They really know how to do their job. They're an excellent leader. They just maybe are missing it in the relationship piece and how to get other people to rally around their idea, how to be persuasive, whatever that might be. And I've worked in that area, but that too comes back to kind of that mental state. Like, where are they? How are they feeling about themselves? They might be abrupt because they're being defensive because they don't have any confidence in the area that they're working at. They're just all different reasons. And I don't know, when you have a hammer, everything's a nail. And right now I'm really feeling like mindset is so key to so many other things. And that's what I'm working on right now.
Well, and
And
I think
I do love the physical, as you already know. But
I think you're talking about 3 areas though when you work with
okay.
people, because you're talking about mental, you're talking about emotional, and you're talking about communication
Yeah,
as
true.
key to that mental and emotional. So I think those are
Yeah.
really important. And I do think communication is a key in all relationships. And when
Mhm.
we're clear and confident and communicate well, people's feelings get hurt less. People don't walk away from jobs and relationships misunderstood. And so that is
Yeah,
really important.
that's
So Pam, you've been around the health world a long time as well. And I
right.
always like to do a little myth bust before we close out. Like, what's something about health that you wish somebody would, let's just bust that and let people know. Somebody was writing about bubbly water today, and she's a girlfriend that's a dietitian, and she's like, it does not dehydrate you. Quit telling people that. I wrote this whole thing on Instagram and I was laughing, but I was like, I love that you're saying that, because I think if somebody hears something, then oh, Pam, you have to work out 3 hours a day. Oh, you can't eat chicken. Oh, you
Mm,
can't drink bubbly water. And I think people get so confused in any area of health, they don't know where to start. So do
Yeah.
you have a myth you can bust and maybe a key to getting started for somebody who's sitting home, who's feeling like all 7 areas of health are out of whack? Any suggestions?
I absolutely do. And it's so simple. But the reality is I realized as a personal fitness trainer, I'm gung ho. I know all about the workout and how to build your muscles and be fit and trim. And, fit is the new sexy was my mantra for some of those ladies in their 50s that came to me and said, I need some help. The reality is that health is not, there's not just one way to be healthy. And I think all of us look at, the picture of the bodybuilder or something in the magazine, or the person that's all lean and mean. I've met a lot of fat, skinny people. But by that, I mean, they're not overweight to look at, but they don't have any muscle mass. And so they're unhealthy, even though from the outside, you might think, oh, look, their physique, they look really healthy. So what I want to say is that you can't impose your version of healthy on somebody else.
Yeah.
Somebody couch potato might be out there sitting there saying, I don't even know where to start. I feel so bad about everything. You just need to do one thing different. I worked with a man. I was certified as a Biggest Loser pro, not on TV. I don't yell at people, but
Goodness.
but he was over 500 pounds and he came to me. We met first. Huge man. I'm 5'1". Like, he was just a very big man, used to play football in college and then kept eating the same way he ate in college, like into his mid 30s, and was over 500 pounds. So where do you start? Well, you start with finding out what's the one thing that you can do that will be the smallest thing that would have the biggest impact. So he was drinking 6 Cokes a day. Good. Can you drink 3 Cokes a day?
Mm-hmm.
That would save him 300-ish plus calories a day. And he would start to, lower that calorie load, plus then working out with me on weights and weight training. So that's my thing for anybody out there who doesn't even know what to do next, is pick just one thing. Most diets fail because a diet is a totally different eating experience from what you're doing right now. And you go out and you buy all this food and you're cooking totally different, and you do it for a week and then you're exhausted and it's totally foreign to what you were doing, and you slowly go back to your old habit. So start where you are and take the most egregious thing you're doing. If you eat dessert every night after dinner, stop doing that a couple nights a week. And then
have it for breakfast. That's my
or
suggestion.
for breakfast.
Well, you got all day to burn those calories. So
when the kids are out of the house, and you eat dessert first, because you don't have to set up, to be a model for anybody.
Or instead of dinner.
If you've gotten into that habit, but it's that picking that just that one thing that would make a difference. That's what I have to say.
I love that, and I love water. I think it's underrated, and I didn't used to love it, but it's amazing how just switching 1 cup of coffee or 1 glass of wine or 1 Coke out for a glass of water can start to shift slowly. So thanks for that, Pam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pam, if people want to get a hold of you, if people want to hear some of your tips, what's the best way to connect with you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
That's the best place to find me. Perfect. And I'm Pam Lein-Miller, LeinMiller, just like it's spelled on here. And I'd be happy to connect with you and look forward to it. Actually, I love to make positive connections. If you're a whiner, don't contact me. If you're going to be all negative, but if you're a friend of Annie's, I know that's not the case. So right. I'm not really worried.
So I'll make sure to tag you on here, Pam. Thank you so much for being with me today, for sharing your tips on how to stay hopeful, healthy, and happy. I hope that one of our listeners, at least, if not more, got a tip that you can use right now that felt encouraged to keep going, whether you're going up a hill in your mind or physically. We're here to cheer you on, believe in you, and keep going. And I will see you next week on H3 TV. Thanks, Pam.